Welcome to a presentation on the Bowen Pipeline Project. This video is for people who couldn't attend a public meeting or have a face-to-face meeting. So over the next X minutes, we're going to present the key information to you for the Bowen Pipeline Company's Bowen Pipeline Water Project. The overview of the presentation is that we're going to cover off on project timing, the water products, the assets that you will own, the tradability of those assets, capital prices, annual charges, the paperwork, and the benefits of unit ownership and next steps. So the first slide is an overview of the imminent timelines. Effectively, we are circulating to all prospective customer investors an agreement in early to mid-June. We'll ask you to return that completed form if you're interested to purchase water and or invest by the middle of July, by 14 July. We'll then send you an invoice, and then hopefully you can make your first payment by the 21st of July. The Bowen Pipeline Company is flexible, we're customer-centred, so we're happy to get forms in June, July, get payments done by the end of July. We'll then summarise all that into a report. That report will go to the Queensland Government in August this year, and then the Queensland Government, if they choose to, will send that report down to the Australian Government in Canberra in September of this year. And then the Australian Government can consider all of that information in late 2026 and will likely make a funding decision on the project in 2027. We're thinking mid-2027, but the safest bet is to say somewhere in 2027, the Australian Government will make a decision. So that's what's driving the current timelines. Put another way on this slide, effectively we're asking for you to put in your agreements by mid-July, pay towards the end of July, Government makes a decision in 27, 28 and 29 will be the construction of the pipeline, and then in 2030 you'll receive a letter saying thank you for your early payments back in 26 and 27. Please now find the balance of your capital funding, and you'll be given 90 days or more to find that money, and then you'll pay it, and then shortly after that the water will be turned on in 2030, a little bit of a way before the Olympics. So in terms of the pipeline, there's a slide here which shows effectively from the top left to the bottom right a 120 kilometre main line or main water line, which runs from the Burdekin River through Inkerman, through Gummaloo and Guthalungra, down past through the property Salisbury Plains, which has a 1 month storage there to provide water to the state development area, which is known as Abbott Point Port. And then the pipeline continues down to the town of Bowen and to farms surrounding that town, including south of the town, you can see down to Mount Buckley. The next slide will show that there's more to the project than just a simple main line. So now on this next slide, it also mentions that there are 60 kilometres of branch lines, or what we call spurs, and those are not settled because they will be determined by the location of customers and the volume of demand that customers have, which is what this process in June and July is all about. So the design will be updated to meet the demand needs of customers who effectively sign an agreement and make their first payment in mid-2026. And then branch lines will go to people to whom it is economically viable. And if we can't supply you, we'll just say, sorry, we can't supply you, and refund your money. But generally speaking, if you've got reasonable demands and you're within 10 kilometres or so of the main line, then you will be supplied. In addition, there are 5 pump stations: Burdekin, Inkerman, Guthalungra, Salisbury Plains, and then the Delta down near Bowen. And there are a number of attributes to the pipeline which are important and interesting. One is that it will be HDPE pipeline manufactured on site. And that means you get big barrels of plastic beads poured into a hopper, and then the pipeline is extruded on site into very long lengths. This saves a lot of trucking. In fact, the argument that was put in the business case was that it saves 5 million kilometres of B-double trucking. But above all, for me, the benefit is it has fewer welds. If you've got really long stretches of HDP pipeline underground, there are less welds joining those sections, and the engineers have estimated, because of our chosen technology, there's going to be 9,000 less welds than if we use pipeline that was trucked. Another great feature is that we're going to connect the whole pipeline up and every customer outlet and meter with fibre optics. So we have a supplier, Terra 15, who will supply fibre optics. They're cost effective, but they significantly reduce scheme operating costs and give you really good data on water use and water trading. Even to the point that if there's a leak or excavators working near the pipeline, the optic fibres will detect, a drone will go out and film the activity, whether it's a leak or earth-moving equipment in operation, and report back to headquarters. So that is pretty cool. This slide is about the regional economic uplift as a result of the project. So as a result of this project, KBR Engineering, which is a global international engineering and advisory firm, estimated that there'll be $300 million per year of additional regional economic activity. And that will include some, we think, biodiesel and other major industrial opportunities. And this will increase some local wages by $100 million per year. So in summary, the project will be a great investment in regional infrastructure, which will drive economic activity and employment in that Home Hill area through to Bowen region and wider. It will supply benefits to Townsville, which will be a major nearby centre, and down to Proserpine, including the airport. Now here's the real bit you're interested in as a prospective customer or buyer. It's the product offer. So what are you buying? Up higher in the Burdekin River is a great dam called the Burdekin Falls Dam, one of the most reliable dams we have ever assessed. It sits within the Queensland government-owned corporation Sunwater's Burdekin Horton Water Supply Scheme, and there are over 100,000 megalitres of unsold water allocations in that dam, and it has both medium priority and high priority. So that's where the water will come from. It'll be released down the Burdekin River, lifted out by a new pump station upstream of Home Hill, and that's where the water will enter the new pipeline. There are two products. I'll focus more on the medium priority product, but there are two products for sale. So if you are an agricultural customer, you're definitely more likely to be interested in medium priority, which is 95% monthly reliable. And if you're an industrial customer who wants continuous and uninterrupted, exceptionally secure supply, you could purchase high priority, which has legislated security of 100% monthly reliability, which is pretty well unheard of. So those are the two products. Medium priority, 95% monthly reliability, high priority, 100%. So what will you own? Well, if you're a medium priority customer, you're going to own 3 assets. A water access entitlement from the Burdekin Horton Water Supply Scheme. That's what we call a water allocation, and that will transfer to your balance sheet. You will also own a water delivery entitlement, or a WDE, which in some schemes is called a peak flow entitlement, but it's effectively your share of the Bowen Pipeline network. And then in terms of purchasing units in the project, if you're a medium priority customer, every dollar you pay into the project, whether first, second or third payment, will purchase you a share of ownership. So you effectively become a unit holder in the Bowen Pipeline Unit Trust. And then the right-hand side of this screen says, well, can I trade these? Well, the answer is yes. If you have a water volume, you can trade it permanently or temporarily. Your WD can be traded similarly, permanently or temporarily. Your units can't be traded temporarily, but they can be sold. So you've got 3 assets and they're tradable. and the water assets can be traded during the year, or and then you hold the asset, or they can be sold in 1 megalitre lots permanently. Just for a little bit of detailed explanation, a WAE, or a water allocation, is measured effectively in megalitres per year, or nominal entitlement, whereas the WDE, your share of the pipeline, is simply expressed as megalitres per day. You can see it's just a flow rate. Well, not just a flow rate, it's a flow rate which allows you to water your crops or provide water to your enterprise during hot, dry times. And there are opportunities to improve upon standard flow rates with trading. Now for prices. There's a capital price, and then there's an ongoing annual charge. So for medium priority, the capital price is, drumroll, $2,500 per megalitre. We've structured that into 3 payments, one now in July 2026, which is 3% of $2,500, or $75 a megalitre. Then if and when the government makes a decision to fund this project, let's say in early to mid 2027, you will then be written a letter inviting you to make your second 7% payment, and that's $175 per megalitre. So your 2 first payments will add up to 10%, or $250 per megalitre, and then you're done for a fair while. You put up your 10% and you will watch the project be constructed. And then 90 days before the project is switched on, commissioned and switched on, you'll be asked for 90% of your payments, or $2,250 per megalitre. So that's the capital price. The reason it's structured this way is to effectively benefit customer investors. We found in the Tasmanian irrigation schemes that 10% upfront demonstrated commitment without being onerous to the investor. 90% comes just before you have water, and then of course you can make money. You can make money from that major capital investment shortly afterwards. So it just basically protects customers from putting up too much money too early. It asks you for the lion's share of your contribution just before you can use it for economic benefit. Okay, there's a table here which you could replicate with a calculator, where you take your demand, multiply it by the first or second or final payment, and you'll see what sort of money you're up for. So if you're a minimum, the policy is minimum demand of 20 megalitres per outlet. So your first payment would be $1,500, your second $3,500, and then your final payment in 2030 would be $45,000, and so on. Paperwork. In effect, there's 2 bits of paperwork. There's a light water sales agreement now in June, July, and then there's a more detailed operational water sales contract after government has made its funding decision in 2027. The reason we do that is we don't want you to have to review a massive, complex water sales contract suitable for an operating scheme early in the process when you're putting up a 10% payment. The water sales agreement process, this light agreement now in July, actually has 2 parts. We're going to ask you to populate the locations, so lot and plan number, address, GPS coordinates of where you would like your outlet to be. In the Part A form, we'll then review it, pre-populate a Part B form, which will come back to you for signing, which is an application for units in the company. But to all intents and purposes, the water sales agreement is a light 2-part documentation. It's still legally binding, and while there are ways to exit from the agreement, such as if we can't supply you or if the project does not proceed in 2026, generally speaking, this is risk capital. So if you put up your 3%, you should expect it to be put to work developing a detailed engineering design, and if that occurs, then that risk capital of yours will be forfeited, not refunded if you were to pull out. But the good news is whatever money you've put in, you will be issued units for, so you will remain a unit holder. And you can read the contracts, you'll see. The first one is not overly complex, and we haven't drafted the water sales contract because we we'll wait until the government makes its funding decision. Okay, so that's largely the capital dealt with. This is a very important but simple slide. What is your holding cost once you own this allocation and once the scheme is operating in 2030 and beyond? Well, your annual charges for a medium priority product are a $200 per megalitre fixed, and then your variable charge, which varies with your metered water use, will depend on the zone you are in. So have a look at this slide. You probably know whether you sit in zone 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5, but let's say you sat in the middle between Guthalungra and Salisbury Plains. You're in zone 3, you pay $200 per megalitre whether or not you use the water, because that cost covers the fixed costs of salaries and utilities and insurance and so on, divided by the volume of the scheme. But your pumping cost would, in that case, be $70 per megalitre, and that reflects the 3 pump stations it took to get the water to you. If you're down in zone 5, your pumping cost is greater because it's moved through 5 pump stations, and if you're up in zone 1 between Burdekin River and Inkerman, then your pumping cost is only $25 per megalitre because you're only moving the water a short way. There's no capacity or fixed cost in the Part B variable charge. It is literally the relevant component of the electricity bill, and we've already removed from that cost the savings from having solar panels. So in summary, you pay your $200 fixed charge every year regardless of water use, and then you pay the appropriate water use charge based on your metered water use to reflect electricity pumping costs. And that's the end of the pricing section. Now there's a short section on the technical specifications for those of you who are active water users, so I'll just go through that now. The water is available 350 days a year, 22 to 24 hours a day. The reason we say 350, not 365 days a year, is the operator reserves the right to shut down for up to 2 weeks a year to do major planned maintenance. So it's a sort of a minimum water accessibility, 350 days. Similarly, it doesn't happen often, but the operator wants the opportunity to occasionally shut the pumps off for a couple of hours in a 24-hour cycle if needed for unplanned maintenance. But you could almost say the water is available 24/7 with the exception of the shutdown periods, which is quite a standard approach. Now, the key decision that the engineers made when designing this was to allow you to obtain all of your water over a 9-month period or a 270-day period. So yes, you can get water all year long, except for the short shutdown, but you could get all your volume in 270 days. So if you buy 2,700 megalitres, you divide by 270 days and your flow rate is 10 megalitres per day. Similarly, if you buy 270 megalitres per year, you divide that by 270 days and your flow rate is 1 megalitre per day, or 1 million litres per day, which is roughly a 25-metre swimming pool full of water. And so that's flow rate. And then what is your pipeline pressure? Well, the minimum guaranteed pressure is 7 psi. But that's a very cautious guaranteed minimum. That is for a customer at the end of a spur. So typical operating pressures are thought to be higher than that, in the order of 10 to 40 psi. You may, if you're immediately downstream of a big pump station, experience higher pressure, but you're only guaranteed 7 psi, and you will work out over time what your typical pressures are in your scheme. Okay, so we've just finished pipeline pressure, and now we're going to cover customer outlet size, or bandwidth, if you like. You will recall earlier we talked about flow rate. So if you buy 270 megalitres, you divide that by 270 days, the delivery period, and you have a flow rate of 1 megalitre per day. but the engineers will install an outlet which will have as a minimum 3 times that flow rate capacity. So if you're a 270 meg customer with a 1 megalitre per day nominal flow rate, you will be given an outlet which is 3 times that at least. So your outlet will handle 3 megalitres per day. You don't have an immediate right to use that whenever you want, because that would be a much higher spec, more expensive scheme that is sensible to build. But you can access if you do 2 things. One, you acquire the entitlement. I often say you acquire the paper entitlement, but actually you will acquire the digital entitlement to that flow rate. You could trade it from another connection point of your own, so trade it to yourself, or you could trade it from a neighbour in the flow rate temporary market. Once you have the digital right to take a higher rate of flow, then you have to submit that to BPC. It'll be a very quick online process, just to say, can the pipeline handle it? And you will gain engineering approval if the hydraulic capacity of the line will handle it at the time. Typically the answer will be yes, but if absolutely everybody in your spur wanted 3 times their flow rate in the same week, then you might not get it. You might get 1.5 or 2 times. So effectively, we're building a bit of future proofing into the bandwidth of your customer outlet, which is pretty handy. There's one slide now which is just a brief comparison with other new schemes. I'd get you to focus more on this scheme, the Bowen MP, Bowen Medium Priority Ag product, versus the Lockyer beside it. Granite Belt and Hughenden are, well, respectively a brownfield and a greenfield project, but at this stage their development is paused, so it's more helpful just to focus on Bowen and Lockyer. Lockyer has fantastic reliability, it's 90% plus, but because of the Burdekin Falls Dam, the Bowen Medium Priority product is 95% monthly reliability. Both exceptional, Bowen slightly better. The Lockyer has a more affordable capital price of $1,500 per megalitre, and that's a complicated story, but it's part of a city deal, so it's a different funding arrangement, which is very beneficial to the users. But our capital price is more on the money for a medium priority product, and it's $2,500 per megalitre. And that's because the project wants the customers to make a very meaningful contribution towards the overall capital costs to help the projects be worthy of significant government capital funding. So if we demonstrate the willingness to pay good money, then government are more inclined to say, this is real, we'll help you. First payment is the same, $75 per megalitre. On the annual charge, that's probably the Bowen project's, one of its great strengths, is our fixed annual charge is $200 a megalitre, whereas the Lockyer's is $500 per megalitre. Now the different products, the Lockyer's is purified recycled water, and yours is bulk, the Bowen project is bulk water from the Burdekin River. But in summary, both are great projects. It's just that Bowen has a more affordable annual fixed charge. Annual variable charges are similar. In both schemes, you will own the water allocation. In both schemes, you can trade volume and flow rate, both permanently and temporarily or seasonally. But the standout benefit of the Bowen Pipeline is that not only are you an owner, which is the case with the Lockyer, but you also can earn dividends. And I have not seen this before in an Australian irrigation scheme. So one of the great investment opportunities here is to acquire the 3 assets we spoke about, and against your units be eligible for dividends if and when the project is profitable. All right, we're almost finished. We're down now to the benefits of ownership. In summary, this scheme will not be a government-owned scheme, it will be a privately owned scheme. We're very much inspired by the high performance of an irrigator-owned scheme called Malawa Water at St George in Queensland. We've learnt a lot from the owner-operators of that scheme, and we would like to emulate their success in terms of efficiency and customer centricity. For example, we will hold annual meetings to provide transparency on what was the water use, what was the budget, what will next year's annual charges be, and then we will allow customers an opportunity to vote on next year's annual charging options. Will we have a price freeze? Will we have a small rise, or will we have a modest rise, depending on the risk appetite and the situation facing the scheme in each subsequent year. So that's the participation model. On the right-hand side, as noted, once the scheme is profitable, dividends will be paid. The forecast is year 3, but we'll see how things go. And if the scheme does well, that'll happen earlier. If it has to work harder to make profit, that will happen later. In terms of the capital value, we think the capital value of this $2,500 purchase, particularly the units, is likely to rise as the project de-risks between now and 2030, but that's obviously just a general statement. It's not financial advice. And then the capital price from 2030 onwards is genuinely unknown, but we have seen in other schemes in Australia, medium priority, start around $1,500 and trade up to $3,000 a megalitre or more, but that could take 5, 10, 15 years to occur. And that's the exciting opportunity for an investor, and also it is unknown. I guess if we all knew the future, we'd be a lot more successful, but as we do not, we're just saying the capital value of your assets can change over time. In terms of how many units will you get, I can only speak to the unit price now. That's $2.50 a unit. So if you buy 1 megalitre of medium priority, your first payment of $75 divided by $2.50 per unit, and you will be issued 30 units per 1 megalitre as a medium priority customer investor. And then finally, we're up to next steps. Whew. So please, we'll send out the agreement late this week or early next week. So everyone should have this agreement by the middle of June. And then you have a month or so to review it and consider if this is for you. Complete that agreement by the middle of July. 14 July is the due date. And send it back to watersales@bowenpipeline.com.au, or send it to Sean, or send it to me, Angus MacDonald. If you have our emails, we'll keep everything confidential and safely and securely saved into a customer database. And then we'll send you out invoices for payment 1, and we'll hope for those to be paid by 21 July is the aspiration. But let's just say we're aiming for water sales agreements to be in mid-July and payments all done by the end of July. And if you want to contact Sean Brown, who is effectively the managing director of the Bowen Pipeline Company, you have his details there. Or if you want to talk about more technical aspects of the water sales process, please contact me. And my mobile is there and my email is there. And the only thing to add is we have a couple of pages of policies here. I've effectively spoken to all of them, but I will reiterate that the minimum volume per customer outlet is 20 megalitres. That's important. And that's because at any lower, the customer's capital contribution might not even cover the cost of an outlet. So it's not a punitive policy, it's just practical. So looking for a minimum 20 megalitres per outlet. You're welcome to multiple outlets, or even on one farm. I recommend 2 or more, but that's very much a decision for you as an investor. And there's a policy there on variable charges, which a number of investors have sought clarity on. I spoke to it earlier, but effectively, you will pay the variable charge linked to where the water is delivered, regardless of where you located yourself initially. In the fullness of time, wherever the water is taken is what charge will apply, because it's cost reflective of the relevant electricity costs and no more. And with that, I can conclude, and thank you very much for listening. One is, if my property is X kilometres from the main pipeline route, will I be supplied? So the answer is, if it's economically sensible to supply you, yes. So it will be a function of distance and volume. So if you have a largish volume, in the hundreds of megalitres or in the thousands of megalitres, and if you're a short distance from the pipeline, let's say within 7 to 10 kilometres of the pipeline, the answer is probably yes, unless there's a compelling planning reason which prevents a pipeline going to your property. If you're over 12 kilometres away and or you have a low volume like 20 to 100 megalitres and no one else wants water on that road, then maybe not. So it comes down to the Bowen Pipeline Company making a sensible decision is what is the cost per megalitre of supplying you, and does that fall below or above a sensible threshold? So in other schemes, that threshold might be $30,000 per megalitre. And if you're below the threshold, yes. If you're above it, no. Now that threshold has not been determined because it really depends on the volume of supply we get and its location. But in summary, what you should do is simply express the volume you want and the location you want it at. And if we have any trouble getting it to you for an economically sensible price, we'll have a conversation. And we might say, well, we can get it to here and you could run your own pipeline from this point. Or we might say, let's talk to your neighbours and build some stepping stones of demand from the main line to you. So it's resolvable, but the answer is simply to be truthful and say, I want this volume at this location to start the conversation. There's a question about under what circumstances would I be refunded my first 3% payment? The first circumstance is if we cannot supply you, then you'll get your money back. The engineers will look within a couple of weeks of the water sales period closing. So let's say it closes end July to simplify things, and the engineers look at everything in August. By the end of August, I should be able to come back to you, or Sean will, and say, look, it looks like we can't supply you. Once we've had that conversation, see if there's a solution. If we still can't supply you, you'll get your money back. So that's the first circumstance. The second is when we aggregate all the demand we've received during this water sales process, and in the unlikely event that the Bowen Pipeline Company decides not to proceed with an application via the Queensland Government to the Australian Government for capital funding. So if we effectively press a stop on the project, then everybody will have their first payment refunded. And then beyond that, if we proceed, which we consider to be highly likely, then once we have decided to proceed, then your first payment is risk capital. You will be issued with units in return for that payment, but it won't be refundable between, let's say, end of August and funding decision 27, because it will be put to work. And the primary use for it will be detailed engineering design and a class 1 costing. The project already has a level 2 costing. It's more of a low end class 2, but it's above a class 3 costing. We will need to develop the updated engineering design to meet the results of this water sales, particularly the location of customers on spurs, and that money will be spent once we decide to proceed. And then beyond that, there are very few opportunities to exit and be refunded, but there are opportunities to exit and maintain your unit ownership without a refund, but without being compelled to continue through to the final payment if your circumstances have changed. So it's a reasonably firm commercial process, but there are some reasonable exit pathways for changes of circumstances or the lack of delivery or a lack of proceeding to funding applications. So another great question people have asked is, what is the water quality? So this is referred to as bulk raw water. it is whatever is the water quality that is not just held in Burdekin Falls Dam, but then released from that dam. It takes several days to flow down the river to the point at which our pump station will lift it out of the Burdekin River into the pipeline. So it's raw water. It's in no way got a Queensland Health classification, but we did do some water tests on it recently and the saltiness is low. So the result was somewhere between 100 and 200 parts per million saltiness, or EC. So for those of you who understand what that means, you'll say, wow, that's a very low salt content. And the benefit of having a 100 to 200 ppm water is it's a reasonably fresh river water that can be blended on site with salty groundwater to produce a generally better quality of water from a production perspective than perhaps salty groundwater on its own would be. Okay, so if you're asking what are the chances that government will fund this, that's a great question. We do not have a crystal ball. We are doing everything that we can to build a strong, sustainable, community benefiting regional project which will have significant economic benefits. We're working with First Nations people. We're working to ensure that the farming is best practice with zero or minimal runoff to protect the Great Barrier Reef. Every stone that can be turned to ensure this project is excellent, both from a sustainability perspective and a community perspective, every avenue is being explored, but ultimately this is a decision for government. And a request for funding this large would generally be viewed as a political decision. And so the best we can do is do a thorough job addressing all the issues raised by the Queensland government and the Australian government, address all of their issues and just hope that the project stacks up as worthy of public investment. So another question that people could ask is about the approvals and planning processes. This is probably one of the great strengths of the Bowen Pipeline Project, in that the proponent, the Bowen Pipeline Company, comes from a planning and approvals background. So many years of effort have been put into securing easements, securing rights, working with property owners. So the project is very far advanced in terms of the approvals for the main line for the 120 kilometres from the Burdekin River through to Bowen. The area which is not heavily advanced is the approvals for the spurs. Because this current June-July process, water sales process, will, as always, surprise us in terms of where the volumes are located. While preliminary work has been done on planning approvals for the spurs, there will be more to be done. So by the end of July, once we know where the spurs should go to economically meet the customer demand we have agreements for, there will be a body of work between August and construction commencing on planning approvals for the spur lines. The Bowen Pipeline Company is well aware of the vast array of issues associated with such approvals, but we didn't want to invest too much of our limited funds in gaining spur line approvals when they can change during water sales 2026. So as I said, once we have the final alignment drawn and agreed, then there'll be a small to medium parcel of work to work on approvals for spur lines. But in terms of the main line, those approvals are highly advanced. I would say we're 9/10 of the way there with the main pipeline approvals process. That's a symbolic 9/10. Yeah, so it's a good question. So other people, or people may ask, what's the future ability to upgrade the pipeline if all of a sudden we get a huge biofuels or a huge sustainable aviation fuel sector emerging in central Queensland in the pipeline region, particularly around Bowen and the state development area where significant water dependent developments could take place. The first answer to that is that the Bowen Pipeline Company is very likely to build in significant redundancy or significant capacity to meet future demand in the original design and install diameters of pipeline which will cope with quite significant future increases where it's cost effective to do so. The reason we say that is a lot of the cost of a project is in mobilising work crews and digging trenches, and not so much in simply the materials of the pipeline. Obviously, the larger the pipeline you manufacture on site, the more it costs, but not disproportionately. So the first answer to future growth is, I believe a considerable provision will be made in the original design and construction for future growth. Beyond that, I don't see us digging a second trench and putting in a third pipeline, because most of this is dual pipeline. But yes, it is possible to boost the pumping abilities. So for example, in the Salisbury Plains pump station, there is room for more pumps to be purchased and installed within the sort of civil structure. And that will accommodate significant future growth in the state development area known as Abbott Point Port. So I think the primary answer is future growth is largely built into the project, but there are always things that engineers can do down the track if they need to further augment the scheme.